Next Chapter Podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And here comes the native of Monterrey trying to take control of this race.
He's been tucked up behind him this whole way. Now he pops out into the braking zone. They're 3 wide for the lead.
Meanwhile, Suárez battling for the lead with Ty Gibbs, and Suárez takes the top spot. The 33-year-old from Monterrey is going to do it. Happy homecoming, Daniel
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this the South got something to say.
Welcome to Our New South, a podcast series presented by Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, North Carolina. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumofthenewsouth.org. Hi, my name is Kevin Blackistone, sports columnist at the Washington Post, coming to you from College Park, Maryland, where I teach journalism at the University of Maryland.
And I'm Dr. Robert Greene II. I'm an associate professor of history at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina.
On season 3 of the podcast, we're welcoming 10 influential Southerners to share insights from their lives and careers, as well as their thoughts on the New South and its future.
We thank you for joining us on this journey and for making the show a Signal Award, Communicator Award, and Anthem Award winner.
Follow the show, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and for the first time, we're now publishing portions of our interviews on YouTube.
Go to youtube.com and search Levine Museum.
Okay, let's get to today's episode of the show.
The South got something to say.
This episode of Our New South examines the intersection of immigration, Southern identity, and the pursuit of the American dream, exploring how a Mexican pioneer is reshaping the culture of the U.S. South's most traditional sport.
Our guest is Daniel Suárez, who will drive the number 7 Spire Chevrolet in his 10th season in the NASCAR Cup Series. A resident of Huntersville, North Carolina, but a native of Monterrey, Mexico, Daniel moved to the U.S. at 19 to pursue his dream. In 2016, he made history as the first driver born outside of the United States to win a major NASCAR championship.
Daniel continues to break barriers, becoming the first Mexican-born driver to win a Cup Series race in 2022.
But before we get to our guest, and I'm so excited for this guest as it's one of my favorite sports, we'll have a history moment from you, Robert. But right now, it's trivia time.
Where was the first NASCAR race held? A, Darlington, South Carolina. B, Bristol, Tennessee. C, Daytona Beach, Florida. Or D, Talladega, Alabama. Stay tuned to the end of the show for the answer.
Okay, now before we get to our guests, I would like to ask Dr. Robert Greene II to provide us with some historical context to set the stage for our conversation.
Arguably, no sport has become a bigger marker of the U.S. South and Southernness than the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, or NASCAR. Created as a result of races between moonshine runners who were proud of their prowess driving the back roads of the South to evade law enforcement during Prohibition, the founding of NASCAR in 1948 carved out a new space for the South in the world of athletics. Since then, the sport has grown in popularity. It began as a regional obsession, but now NASCAR has grown to national and international prominence. With this growth, however, has come the familiar growing pains of any U.S. South cultural bastion, an eventual reckoning with the region's long history of racism and identity. As NASCAR grew in prominence, the sport was also forced to deal with certain elements of Southern iconography that had become prominent at the racetrack. In particular, the flying of the Confederate flag became a key marker of NASCAR fandom by the end of the 20th century. While NASCAR expanded, the Confederate flag continued to be flown by fans at events. Finally, the spur of action to support Black Lives Matter after the death of George Floyd in 2020, and Bubba Wallace, NASCAR's only black driver at the time, demanding action on the flag, led NASCAR to ban the flag at races. But NASCAR had other reasons to leave behind the flag. Like other American sports, NASCAR has increasingly grown reliant on a fresh and growing international market for its product. Where once NASCAR races were only found on American tracks, in recent years, NASCAR has boasted of races at tracks in Mexico City, Montreal, Canada, and discussion of races in nations such as Japan. In addition, an influx of foreign-born drivers such as Juan Pablo Montoya and Dario Franchitti have shown American-born drivers there's new competition from outside the United States. Enter Daniel Suárez. A native of Monterrey, Mexico, Suárez has made a name for himself as one of the most successful foreign-born drivers in NASCAR history. He is also part of NASCAR's recent efforts to address its diversity problem through the Drive for Diversity program in 2013. Mr. Suárez has also embraced the 21st century immigration dream, moving from Mexico to Charlotte, North Carolina, making his adult American home in the heart of the U.S. South and NASCAR country. As Daniel Suárez continues to win on the track, he also represents the greatest hopes of immigrants across the U.S. South and around the United States. Not merely acceptance into the American dream, but the power to rebuild it on their own terms.
And now I'd like to introduce the barrier-breaking NASCAR driver from Monterrey, Mexico, by way of Huntersville, North Carolina. Our new South welcomes Daniel Suárez.
Yeah, Kevin, Robert, thank you so much for having me. It's a true pleasure. First of all, let me say something to you guys. I have a huge respect for everything that you guys do because it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of patience, and a lot of self-commitment to be able to do what you guys do, helping young kids to not just to learn, whatever the class is that you guys are teaching, but to be a good human beings, right? Like to be trained for life. So I have always said that I was very, very blessed that I got great teachers in my life, that they gave me a lot of lessons. And again, not just lessons of the class, but lessons of life. Like, how do you want to approach life? And I have always have a lot of respect for teachers. So thank you guys for everything that you guys do.
Oh man, well, thank you for that compliment. That means a ton.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And what we hope to do today in talking to you is have you educate our audience about your journey and where you're at. And maybe people don't know, but one of the things that we really want to talk to you about is your journey from Monterrey, Mexico, which is where you are from, to the United States to race cars. How did you become attracted to car racing in Monterrey? And how did you wind up just coming to the U.S. to race in NASCAR?
Well, I hope you guys are comfortable because it's a long story and it's been a long journey. Let me start with saying that I don't come from a family of racing. I don't come from a family of money. When I was growing up in a very, very normal, average family, a small house of 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. We all used to fight to get the bathroom in the mornings, and just a working dad that he had a restoration shop. He used to work in cars for a living, and a stay-at-home mom. If you were meeting the Daniel from 10 years old, he was gonna tell you that he wanted to be a mechanic one day. Once I start going to the shop more and more and more, I start to love speed as well. I start to love engines, how to make cars go fast. But at the same time, I learned how to work on engines, transmissions, brakes. I learned how to weld. So I feel like that was gonna be my path. But then, one of my dad's customers, he was into racing, and he invited me to go watch his son one day, and eventually that invitation became to, hey, what about if you jump in the car? And I turned out to be pretty good. And he convinced my dad to get me into racing because he thought I was very good. He actually thought I had an opportunity to drive before he actually gave me that opportunity because I was pretty good. So, and we started into racing, and then very very shortly after we got started, my dad started struggling with money, so I started working with the race team to be able to help to pay for the tires, for the description and things like that. So at that point, I already knew that it wasn't going to be easy for me to stay in racing for very long, but I was good and I was winning, and people wanted me around. So that started to become a thing, and I really liked it, being there. I enjoyed competing. I enjoyed racing. But here is the thing that really I believe that just kept me going is because I was just different. It was almost like being a kid from a different town, because every single person, when I used to talk to the other kids, every single kid, every single one of them, but me, they were in private schools and nice schools and all these kind of things, and I was in a public school. So to the point that they didn't even know where my school was. They didn't even know where I live, my neighborhood. So at that point, I was only 12 years old, and I already knew that if I was gonna become something in racing, I was gonna have to work way harder than everyone else. And I was right. So just things were difficult, but as I started making it into the sport, my goal was to race in NASCAR in Mexico, not in the US, but in Mexico, because that was the biggest series in Mexico. And my dad had to give up a lot of things for me. He sold his business, his restoration shop. He put a mortgage on my mom's home, or the family home, because he really believed that I was talented and he wanted to support me. So that's kind of like how things started to happen, and eventually made it into the biggest series in Mexico, which it was amazing, and that was my goal. But I was only 18 years old, so I was super happy with that. But then soon after that, I received an opportunity to come to the US, which that was almost like starting a whole new career, because I didn't speak English. My family didn't have any connections or any money left. I mean, they were already broken, trying to help me to get into the Mexico series. And eventually, when I decided to come to the US, I prepared the only car I had. It was a 1994 Beetle, and I drove it cross country all the way from Monterrey, Mexico, all the way to Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's how I started my journey. And it was very difficult, because at first, 95% of the people, I mean, nine out of 10 people were telling me that it was impossible for a Mexican driver to be successful in NASCAR, because they thought that the opportunities were not really there. They thought that it was just a very, very American sport, and it was going to be very difficult for a Mexican driver to be successful. So it was very tough for me to really take that out of my mind and continue to push forward, and to go into something without knowing that it's actually possible, because nobody has ever done it before. So, with a lot of work of myself, a lot of people, we were able to put one foot in front of the other, and to make it work, and eventually get to the point where I was winning races, championships, and here I am right now speaking English with you guys.
That's just amazing. And so you just pick up, you hop in this VW Beetle, you drive to Charlotte. Had you been to the US before? Did you know what Charlotte was outside of maybe looking at the shops on TV on some NASCAR channel? Did you have any idea?
I've never been in Charlotte before, but I want to tell you something very funny, because right before I moved to Charlotte.
What year was this?
That was in 2011. In the beginning of 2011, I did a race in California. And this team that I was racing for, it was a very, very small team. And they didn't have a lot of money. It was just a very, very small team. And the goal was for me to get some experience, but it was a very big race in California. It was called the Toyota All-Star Showdown. So there were like 60 cars in the race, and only like 40 of them or 35 of them made actually the race. So the expectation was for me not to make the race and just to practice and to get some laps. Anyway, I ended up going to this race. I ended up making the race. I ended up running in the top 10 and ended up being amazing. And the owner of this team is blown away. And he said, hey, Daniel, if you can only speak English, I think that you can be extremely good. He said to me, what about if you move to my house for a few months? So hopefully you can start picking up the English. I said, okay. So I went back to Mexico. I prepared all my stuff and I ended up moving with this guy for a few months. And this guy happens to be in Buffalo, New York. And I didn't know that. I just went there. It was in January. It was cold as hell, full of snow. I have never seen the snow in my life in Mexico. And I called my dad like a month later. And I said, hey, Dad, I don't think NASCAR is here. I think NASCAR is actually in North Carolina, in Charlotte. So a few months later, I moved back to Mexico. I prepared my video, and then I moved to Charlotte. But the very first time I moved for a few months to the U.S., it was to Buffalo, New York.
Well, that's, and I'm going to turn it over to Robert in a second. I'm just thinking through my head with other sports. I have a friend of mine in Mexico City, Roberto Gonzalez, who kind of heads up Mexican basketball. He played on the 1979 Michigan State college championship team here in the States, and he's been somewhat of a shepherd for other Mexican players into the NBA and into college. And, Major League Baseball, they have, every team has a ramp made up for Spanish-speaking players. Soccer, obviously, but not NASCAR. I mean, I mean, for you to make this journey and to assimilate into NASCAR culture, if you did, is just mind-boggling. That doesn't happen in other team sports.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because literally 30 minutes ago, I was doing an interview and we were talking about exactly that. And I'm gonna tell you what I told him. Everything is about representation, right? Why you see so many Hispanics in baseball? Because there is a lot of them, right? Why you see very, very few Hispanics in basketball? Because there is not many of them. NASCAR is the same thing. Like, in my mind, the reason why today we don't see many Hispanics yet is because there is not many. But here's the thing. All it takes is one crazy person to start thinking that the impossible is actually possible, making it, and then there is a wave of things happening behind. And I happen to be one of those guys. So I believe that the sport today is the most international that it has ever been, and also with the most following from the Hispanic community that it has ever been. So, and it's not just me, right? It's the work of my sponsors, NASCAR, programs that we have done, myself, but it's just the right time, and I just didn't understand that. I remember like 10 years ago when I was coming here, like I was like, man, NASCAR has been around for 65, 70 years, and there has never been a Mexican driver successful in the Cup Series. I didn't understand it. So I really wanted that to be changed.
And Daniel, that is a great segue to our next question. First off, like Kevin, I'm very happy and thrilled to have you on the program today. Now, I'm a native-born Southerner. I've grown up with NASCAR my entire life. I can remember some of the rivalries between Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt and so on and so forth, growing up in the 90s and early aughts. So NASCAR is very much part of my blood as well. But, NASCAR has a reputation, even amongst Southerners, as a sport that has often attracted diehard fans who would, for example, fly Confederate flags, who may have had certain viewpoints on race and ethnicity in American society. But NASCAR itself has tried to, as you just alluded to a moment ago, try to diversify over the last generation or so. Now, you're a graduate of what's now known as the NASCAR Driver Development Program, was once known as the Drive for Diversity, or D4D. How do you feel that, as a driver from Mexico, your presence has been received by NASCAR fans? And do you feel that the sport is making enough strides to feel all sorts of fans and drivers alike feel welcome and respected?
Yeah, that's a great question, Robert, because I truly believe, I'm 33 years old right now, 2025, 33 years old. If I was 33 years old in the 80s, there was no chance I was going to be successful. No chance. Why? It was just a different time, right? Like the doors were not as open as right now. Like you mentioned about the Confederate flag. Maybe that was okay 30, 40 years ago. Today's not. Like we're in a different time. Like we're in a completely different time, and that's not okay, right? Like, and we have to accept that, and we have to understand that as a society, we are evolving, we're getting better, and we have to understand that to be able to get to whatever it is that we want to go, we have to be a place where diversity and inclusion is a priority, because that's what this country is all about. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of NASCAR right now, because I believe that NASCAR is moving the needle today internationally with Drive for Diversity more than ever have before. Because these things, you guys know this, like NASCAR has been working on this for 15, 20 years. But these are the kind of things that they don't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes a process. It takes a system. It takes, time and time and time. I mean, I've been racing in NASCAR already for almost 10 years, and there were many Mexicans that they didn't find out about me until 3 or 4 years ago. So it's just a process, right? It doesn't happen overnight. So it's funny because actually I'm good friends with Pitbull. And he always tells me, he said, man, my friends in the hood, they always tell me that, hey, man, you're an overnight success. I said, man, I'm it's funny you say that, because I've been working my ass off for 15 years to get to this point. So, sometimes just people see the very end, but it's just a whole journey that you have to do to be able to get to wherever it is that you want to go.
You won 10 races in the NASCAR Mexico Series. You were the first non-American driver to win a NASCAR National Championship Series race. You're also the first Mexican-born driver to win a NASCAR Cup Series race, and even win a NASCAR Infinity Series race in Mexico. So you have accomplished a great deal. But how do you feel that your achievements have really helped the growth of Latino fans and drivers alike within the sport of NASCAR?
I mean, man, I think Latinos are extremely loyal to me, and they love me. With that being said, who doesn't like winning? I haven't met somebody that doesn't like winning. And who doesn't like to support somebody that is winning, right? It has to be hand to hand with it. My fans, the people that support me, they love me for who I am, my background, but they love that I can be competitive, and they love that I can win races, I can race up front. Am I going to win every race? Probably not, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And that's something very important, right? Like, we all want to be in the train when we are having success. And I for me, that's very important, like I don't want to just be the Mexican driver representing the Latinos and just take it for granted and that's it. Oh no, that's it. I have these guys forever anyways. No, it doesn't work like that, because these guys wants to support somebody that is winning. These guys wants to support somebody that is being successful. And I want to be that guy. I want to be different, and I want to be successful. I don't want my career to be remember just, oh, that was the Mexican guy. No. I want to be the Mexican guy that was winning too. So it was that's for me is very important.
I want to get back to something we were talking about earlier as well, and that is about your living in Huntersville, North Carolina, and how long you've been there now. You said you really hadn't been to the U.S. until that crazy quixotic trip in your VW Beetle, right? What did you know about the American South then? Did you have any concepts of it? And what have you come to learn and feel about it since?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. I didn't know a lot. Especially because I didn't even speak English. So I was a little bit naive in many things coming into the US, in the things that I needed to do, on the culture, on how to my relationship with people. Like there were a lot of things that I needed to learn, slowly. And it has been a journey, right? Like it's been a learning process. I've been fortunate enough to learn many things, many of those things the hard way. But something that I have learned, at least for me, in with my community, is that I'm extremely blessed, to be Hispanics, because I'm able to represent a huge community in this country. That at one point, to be honest, when I moved to North Carolina, I thought, man, Hispanics are in Texas, they're in Miami, California, Phoenix, Las Vegas, the West Coast, but I don't know if they're going to be in Charlotte. and you come to find out that the Hispanics are everywhere. So there is a huge community of Hispanics here. So I feel very proud for that. For me, it's very personal as well, to be able to be a successful Hispanic here and to be able to represent these people in the sport that there is not many of us.
And did you find that community when you first got to North Carolina?
Slowly, yeah, slowly. And in the last handful of years, I've been doing some work with some of my sponsors to go to some high schools and schools that are heavily Hispanic, for me to go out there and share my story a little bit, because I always tell people, this is something that for me is also one of my missions. Maybe this is going to happen more after racing, but I do a little bit now. That many times, when you when you talk about an Hispanic or a Mexican jobs, the first thing that comes to your mind is construction, landscaping, Mexican restaurants, cleaning, things like that. It was very important to go to these schools to talk to the Hispanic kids, to tell them, hey, I don't know what you guys are, what you guys have in mind. I don't know what your parents are doing today, but I can guarantee you that your parents are working very, very, very hard to give you guys an opportunity. And if your dad is doing X, whatever that may be proud of it. But that doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. You are going to do whatever it is that you want to do, be passionate about it, and work very hard for it. Because whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it. But you have to put it here. So it's important for these kids to know that whatever it is that they want to, and I'm in a beautiful position, because I came probably to the most American sport ever and I made it. So I feel like it's part of my responsibility to be able to share this message, because I believe that I'm in a spot to do it.
And moving to the South, and I assume that you didn't have any family in North Carolina.
No, in the U.S.
in the U.S., which makes you even more unusual, because when we talk to people or think about people in terms of immigrating to the U.S., which you wound up doing, they generally have some family to lean on when they get here. But you came here and had no one to lean on except your own talent in this fantastic sport. So what was that like for you, particularly in the South? And as Robert pointed out, particularly in a sport that also has a certain image in this country, to get comfortable. I assume everything wasn't without speed bumps for you to get comfortable living in the South.
Here is the thing, is that there is a lot of things that people that was born and raised here, they have, and they don't even think about it, because they have had it their entire life. And very, very simple things like that, I had to go figure it out how to get it. For example, do you guys remember when you guys got your Social Security?
No, I mean,
no, right? I mean, you guys were probably kids. Well, I realized that without a Social Security, I couldn't rent an apartment. So I have to go through the system to try to get a Social Security. And I asked my dad, he said, man, I have no idea. He doesn't speak English either. So, simple things like that. So every time I was going to a shopping center, I was calling my mom. And I was with my mom for 45 minutes, trying to figure out what to buy to be able to make a home. So just little things like that, like I didn't have a grandma or an uncle or an aunt or something. Hey, can I go, crash a little bit and maybe have dinner with you guys? I didn't have that. When I was struggling, I was alone. When I was happy, I was alone. When I was crying, I was alone. so, so it was a process I have to go through. But at the same time, I always tell people that if I didn't have these tough moments in my journey, I was not gonna make it. I was not gonna make it. I always, when I was growing up in racing, I cannot tell you how many times I felt so unlucky because since my go-kart days, because I used to see all these kids with all this money and I only had the old go-karts and I used to beat them with the old go-karts, but I always thought once in a while they used to let me use the new ones just to try them. And I was extremely fast. And I used to think to myself, man, if I had those go-karts, these guys will never see me. Never see me. But what I didn't know is that life was preparing me for something bigger. And if I wasn't struggling, I was not going to make it. I was not going to be the first Mexican to win a race. I wasn't going to be the first non-American to win a championship. All these different things that I have been able to do without the struggles, there was no way that these things were going to happen.
And I'm really curious because we've had other folks on the show who were immigrants to the South and to the United States. And I'm curious as to ask you, have you found any similarities between living in the South and your life in Monterrey, Mexico? Or is it just totally, totally different?
Well, in Mexico, well, not in Mexico only, but in with Hispanics, it's just a little bit different. They're just tighter. I have met several Hispanics here in the United States that they don't want to move to a different state because their family or their father or their mother is in that state. So they're just tighter. And I would say that that's probably one of the things that I miss the most, along with the food. But at the same time, this here in the South, there is so many amazing things, safety, how green everything is, the quality of life. People ask me all the time, hey, Daniel, will you move back to Mexico? And I say, I don't think I will ever move back to Mexico, but I would love to have a place to go there often. My family, I feel like my life is here now, but I would love to have my mom come over here more often, and my friends and my cousins. But the quality of life that you can get here is pretty amazing.
Now, you've been involved in NASCAR for over 10 years now. You're very much a veteran of the sport, and you've seen a lot of tremendous change over those 10 years. Could you talk about what changes you've been surprised by the most, and where do you think more changes are needed in the sport of NASCAR?
Yeah, I would say that the things that have happened that honestly I'm a little bit impressed is how NASCAR has been thinking outside the box. Like the Chicago Street Race. Next year we're gonna race in San Diego. We're racing the LA Coliseum. We race on dirt in Bristol. Like all these different things that I believe that probably 20 years ago they were never gonna happen. So I'm very impressed and proud that NASCAR has been doing these things. Where more work is needed, in my opinion, we have to continue to hit new markets, but at the same time, continue to feed the markets that are strong for the sport. So, the Martinsville, the Darlington, all these markets that are good for the sport, we have to continue to be strong in them.
I want to get back to something you told Robert in your next to last answer to him. Because if I'm not mistaken, I read that you said that you came to this country to race. You didn't come here to become an American.
Yeah.
And now you feel like this is your home. And I know that last year you got your U.S. citizenship.
Yeah.
And you've got that, and you've got a passport. So do you consider yourself now an American? Do you consider yourself even a Southerner?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, because when I moved to this country, I never ever thought I was gonna become a U.S. citizen. Never. It wasn't even on my mind. I didn't even know the process, to be quite honest. Fast forward 10 years later, you start growing, you start learning, I'm married now. Maybe one day we decide to start a family. And you start putting the priorities on the table, right? I had my green card for a very long time, and it was great. I felt very, very good. I started to learn more once we got married and everything. Actually, right before we got married, I started learning more and more about, hey, if something happens, God forbid, you get into an accident, something, even with a green card, you can get kicked out of the country. So, especially now with all the mess that is happening. So, I start feeling, you know what? I'm not as secure as I thought I was. And I didn't like that, especially if one day, we start to have a family. I don't like to feel like that. So I start to realize that what I mentioned to you guys earlier, that I'm gonna be living here in the United States, most likely most of my life. So this is my home. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I'm probably the most proud Mexican you will ever meet. But my adult home is here in the United States, in Charlotte, especially. So I thought it was time to take it to the next level, and become a U.S. citizen and have more security, not just for me, but also for my future family. So that's the reason why I made the decision. It wasn't because I wanted to become an American. It wasn't because I wanted to have a U.S. passport. It was because this is my home, and I want to be secure in this home. I want to make sure that if God forbid something happened, nobody can kick me out, because I've been here for many years now, doing my work and paying my taxes and my good share.
And you mentioned what is going on in this country right now with the immigration policies of this particular administration. Do you feel as secure? Do you have a different sense of being Mexican-born in the U.S.? And particularly after you mentioned the work that you're doing in North Carolina schools, talking to Latino kids about what their parents do for a living or what they envision themselves doing, and knowing that those folks may be under a certain sort of pressure now in this country that was not prevalent or existent when you first came here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very secure because obviously I'm good. I don't have any issues. But it's very hard. It's very, very hard because I can't avoid to think that if this was happening 10 years ago, that could be me. That could have been me, just trying to make it. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just trying to look for a better life, for a shot. That's all we want. 90% of the people that are deporting, that's all they want. They just want a shot. They're good people, most of them. And that's hard. It's very, very hard when you see you people, the people that you care about, the people that you care for, the people that looks like you, that speak your language, to be treated like that. And like I said, 10 years ago, that could have been me, because I was doing exactly the same thing. I was coming here with a tourist visa. Sometimes I was staying longer than what I needed, than what I was supposed to. Just trying to look for opportunity, and I wasn't doing anything bad. I wasn't doing anything bad to anyone. I was just trying to look for a shot. So because of that, it's very, very hard for me, and it's sad to see what's happening.
Now, I want to ask you a question, kind of going back to your NASCAR career. And by the way, thank you for answering that question, because that's on the minds of a lot of our listeners right now. But I want to ask about your relationship to one of your rivals in NASCAR, Bubba Wallace, someone who also represents diversity in NASCAR, someone who's also become sort of an icon and important figure in the sport. Could you tell our listeners a bit about your relationship with Bubba Wallace, especially your on-track rivalry and sort of the camaraderie that you two guys have developed over the years as NASCAR drivers?
Yeah, Bubba and myself, we have a great relationship. We are, I don't have a lot of friends outside the racetrack, like drivers. I can count them with one hand, and he's one of them. He's a good person. He's a good guy. I have known him for a long, long time. Actually, him and we met when I didn't speak English. So it's funny, I can even imagine what is on his mind, meeting a guy and not being able to communicate. And then now, we're close friends. He comes to the house. I go to his house once in a while. My wife is very good friend with his wife, and it's just a good relationship. And obviously on the racetrack, we have not the same journey, but he goes through some of the things. He has gone through some of the things that I have to go through. And obviously, he's very, very proud to be the face of the African American community in NASCAR, and I'm very, very happy for him. He deserves it. He's a perfect role model for that.
Now, with that being said, you're someone who has been in the South for over 10 years now. You've been heavily involved in NASCAR. And we ask all of our guests the same question about their relationship to what we refer to as the New South. When you hear that phrase, the New South, what does that mean to you in particular?
What do you mean with the New South?
Now, see, that's the question, the heart of the podcast itself. So the New South as an idea is that the South traditionally has been thought of in terms of slavery, agriculture, growing cotton, things like that.
Okay.
The New South, since the late 19th century, has been what the South has been since the Civil War. Whether the South can be more modernized, more industrialized, et cetera. But we ask our guests that question because we've gotten so many answers about, as people who are living in the South in the early 21st century, what does the South mean to them now? And I'm just curious, as an immigrant to the South, as an immigrant to America, what does that phrasing mean, especially as someone who had very few assumptions about the South before you moved here?
So all I know about the Old South is things that I have read and things like that. But I didn't even go to school here, so I didn't even learn full deep, how things used to be. But in my opinion, very similar to the Confederate flag, right? Like something that used to be okay several years back, today is not okay, and things have evolved, right? Life changes, and we have to evolve with it, and we have to learn to, as a society, to continue to be better and to continue to grow and continue to be better human beings. And I can talk much about the Old South, but I can tell you that I'm very proud to be here in the New South with people that are Hispanics, with people that are fully Americans, with people that are African Americans, with Asians, with everything. Because in my mind, we're all the same. We bleed the same blood, and we breathe the same air. So, I'm very, very proud to be here and to be one of the group that I can say that I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born here, so I think that for me is it's important to be a good example.
So now we're really going to test you on being in the South, because we've got our rapid fire question segment coming up for you right now.
Okay.
So we're going to give you 5 or 6 questions, and we want you to give us your quick answer.
Okay.
And it's going to be interesting because I think a couple of these will really test how long you've been in the South, what you've picked up. So,
okay.
All right. So the first one is, where is your favorite place to be in the South?
In the woods. In the mountains.
Sweet tea or Arnold Palmer?
I don't know what is the second one.
So the Arnold Palmer is a mix of sweet tea and lemonade. It's actually quite delicious.
Okay, let's take the second one.
Okay.
What's your favorite Southern word or phrase?
Man, this is gonna be tough because I don't know a lot of words or phrases. I don't feel like I'm experienced enough on the South. Yeah. I can remember a few. I can remember a few phrases that friends have had.
Okay.
But I can't remember them now. That's gonna be a tough one for me. I'm too new for that. That's second level.
Okay.
Who is your favorite Southerner, living or dead?
Living or dead, Robert Hoffman, and I want to tell you why, because Robert Hoffman, he used to be my spotter when I just came here and I didn't speak English, and he had a very, very, very like accent. Like his accent was so difficult to understand, so difficult, and he just became my favorite person, man, because my English was none. And then this guy from the South that I can understand anything of what he's saying. So it was impossible. And then you have a guy with a very, very, interesting accent, and a Mexican guy that can speak English trying to speak on the radio. It was impossible.
And what is the most underrated Southern food?
The most underrated Southern food, Chinese. Chinese food.
Which is big in Mississippi.
Yeah. I love Chinese food, man. A lot of people don't like it. I like it.
Okay. And I've got a last one for you as a NASCAR driver or racer. Who's your biggest rival?
Myself. My biggest rival is myself. I woke up every single morning. I look at myself in the mirror, and I get going, right? And then at night, I look at myself in the mirror, and myself to the mirror, and I ask, do you do your best today? Do you push yourself hard? Or there was anything left? So your rival has to be yourself. You're competing with you. And yes, you're trying to beat other guys in the process, but you have to start with yourself. And you have to be the best possible version of yourself. And trying to make yourself better every single day. If you can do that, you can accomplish great things. But focusing on yourself is key.
And I guess I'd ask one more thing. Short track or super speedway?
Short track.
Okay. Well, man, this has been fabulous. Thanks so much for doing this.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
This is a whole another insight into what we've been looking at.
That's awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was fun to chat with you guys for a little bit.
Kevin, I think one of the most interesting aspects of our New South is talking to folks who are not from the South, but moved to the South as immigrants, as migrants, et cetera, and really embodied the Southern experience. And I think Daniel Suárez is a particularly great example of that. Talked to him about his career in NASCAR, about his family life, et cetera, really brought home how the South and Southernness can mean different things to different people. For example, him talking about family reminds me a lot of my own family and making sure to call my mom every single day. I can relate to Daniel in that aspect, but there was so much he talked about that I think was going to stick with us well after this episode airs.
I completely agree. And some of his thoughts were so contemporary in the sense that they speak to where we are as a country right now. I could feel the emotion in Daniel when he talked about immigration and the fact that he would be very concerned if what is going on now was going on 10 years ago. When, as he said, he was here, he was drawn to this country to be a race car driver. And he came to this country because he envisioned it as an opportunity to do that. And that's all he wanted was an opportunity. And so he sees in his Mexican-American community today, Daniel Suárez's just trying to make it, but being concerned when they leave the house, being concerned having to look over their shoulder and possibly being snatched away. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but just because they're trying to step up a rung in society by what this nation has always said it has to offer people. And I was really struck by that.
And what makes that story so intriguing to me, I think to everyone else listening, is that he's balancing that concern with also being a pioneer in what he referred to as the most American sport, NASCAR. And that he understands his place in history, but also understands he has to win to keep and maintain that place in NASCAR history. You know, he's a reminder of how so many immigrants to the United States and to the South in particular have a keen sense of what their place is in society, how they have to work hard to keep their place, but at the same time, how, as he just mentioned, they have to also make space for others coming up behind them, that he understands that he is an icon to so many Hispanic Americans in the South and throughout the country. That is a incredible burden for anybody to carry, and yet he carries it so easily.
And has been successful. I mean, for our listeners who don't know, you can't compare being successful in NASCAR to being successful in Major League Baseball or even in professional basketball or some of the other sports. NASCAR has 40 seats for drivers. You have to be that good in order to make it. And here's a guy who grew up in a working class family in Monterrey, Mexico, who became infatuated with racing cars because his father had a garage. And as a kid, before any of us could get driver's licenses, right, is racing cars, and then comes here sight unseen, first to Buffalo, New York, and eventually to North Carolina, and eventually becomes one of those very few NASCAR drivers. This is as an American story as you can find. And it just so happened to be an immigrant in the South.
You can't get more due South than that.
No. Now it's time for the answer to the trivia question of this week's episode.
Once again, that trivia question was, where was the first NASCAR race held? A, Darlington, South Carolina, B, Bristol, Tennessee, C, Daytona Beach, Florida, or D, Talladega, Alabama? The answer is C, Daytona Beach, Florida.
The first race took place on February 15th, 1948 at Daytona Beach and was won by Red Byron.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this, the South got something to say.
Our New South is presented by Levine Museum of the New South. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumofthenewsouth.org.
Our New South is produced by Next Chapter Podcast. Thanks to our audio editor, sound designer, and composer, Cal Murdoch, video editor, Justin Cortez, producers Brian Douglas, Alexander Pineras, and Cliff Whitfield, senior producer and writer Byron Hunter, and executive producers Jeremiah Tittle and Frankie Abbott. Please follow the show, subscribe, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and watch portions of our interviews on YouTube.
Go to youtube.com and search Levine Museum.
Learn more at nextchapterpodcast.com/Our New South.
The South got something to say.
Thanks for listening.
Next Chapter Podcasts.